Hi friends, I'm Helman and welcome to my third video in my Get Started Stamping series. In this video, we're going to talk about what in the world do you do with all those supplies? Have you found yourself where you ordered a bunch of supplies, you have all these things and you're like, I don't even know what to do with any of this stuff. We're going to make some basic cards, look at the basic supplies and how to use them and get you started using them so that you can actually make some cards and share them with people, which is the point of what we do, right? Stick around the end. We'll talk about positivity as we talk about life like we always do at the end of my videos. Let's get started. So in this video, we're going to make 4 cards. I am going to walk you through from a very simple card using a few supplies up to a somewhat advanced card using a die cutting and embossing machine. But as we go, I'm going to show you what to do with all your products in case you are just not exactly sure where to start. So right here we have some acrylic blocks. This is what you're going to need to mount your stamps to, and I have a stamp set. Now when your stamps come, they're likely going to be mounted between 2 thin sheets of plastic. I like to stick mine to the inside of my stamp case because it makes it easier to pull them off and use them when the time comes. But you just pull those stamps off from between those sheets, find the one or the ones that you want, and you'll need to mount that to an acrylic block. So that's what I have here. Now let me pull in my ink pads, and you may have standard ink pads that the lid just lifts off, or you may have the ink pads I use here from Stampin' Up. I love these. They actually lock closed. It's all one piece. I don't have to worry about losing the lid on my work surface. They're nice and big, really nice ink pads. But I want to show you how to open them if these are the ones you're using. So right here is a little indent. That's where your thumb goes. Lift, flip it all the way around, and it just pushes back and locks in place, okay? So we have our ink pads open, we have our stamps ready. Let me get some scrap paper here. And for this very first card, we're just gonna use a already prepared white card base, do a little bit of stamping on it. We'll clean our stamps, I'll show you that. And then we'll move on to a little bit more involved card. So for this one, I am actually going to, let's stamp our greeting first. And here you can see I have several acrylic blocks. When you're starting out, you may have one, you may have a few, but you can mount stamps to both sides if you want to and get a little bit more use out of your acrylic blocks that way. Now I need to clean my stamp off. So I'll show you how I typically do that. This is my Stampin' Shammy, and it's just a piece of foam chamois material. I'm not sure what it's made out of, but it dries out between uses, and then when I need to use it, I just get it wet, I squeeze out the excess water, and I keep it in an empty stamp case so that it doesn't get any of my paper pieces lying around wet. I don't want that to happen. But so it's damp, and basically I just press my stamp on that and it pulls that ink right off and cleans my stamp, okay? So that's what I do to clean my stamps. Now let's stamp a little bit more. Let's talk about inking your stamp. Now, if you are using, it depends on what kind of ink pads, how hard you want to press when you are inking your stamp. But if you're using standard pads, you may be able to press harder. On these ink pads, you do not want to press at all. I basically set my stamp on that pad. I tap it around once or twice or 3 times just to make sure it is evenly inked. And when that is the case, then I am ready to stamp. Now this is a 2-step stamp right here. Like you're like, what is that? That's some strange looking leaves. Well, it is the first part of a 2-step stamp, and now I can come back in and fill in with some flowers that were made to align right in the spaces of those leaves. So we'll stamp these a few times. I just love, this is actually the first time I have used this particular stamp. I love that. I love how those leaves and those flowers come together and look so nice, okay? So here is a very simple card. that we talked about what to do with your stamps, what to do with your inks, and how to clean your stamps. So now after you're done, you can just pull these back off and put them back between those sheets of plastic. I put mine back in my stamp case and they're ready to use next time. So let's move on to our second card that's a little bit more involved. For this one, I want to show you how to cut paper and how to use that trimmer. So here's my paper trimmer. I love this particular paper trimmer because I can cut and score paper with it. You'll see that here in just a second. I get a lot of questions about the lines on my trimmer. I'm going to have all kinds of information in the video description below for you. I'll have links to all the products I'm using if you would like to add them to your collection. I'll have links to some other videos as well, including a video on what the lines on my trimmer are for. They are here to help me cut card bases and card mats. Like right now, I'm going to line up at this one right here because that's the line I need to use for scoring my cardstock in half. I have a piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock here, and I'm cutting it basically in half to make 2 card bases. First, I'm going to score at 4 1/4. I just did that. Now I am going to turn it the other direction, line it up at 5 1/2 here, one of my lines here. And this time I am using this other blade, the one that says, I marked, it says cut, the darker one, and I can cut it in half. Now I have 2 card bases. So these measure 5 1/2 by 8.5, and they are scored in the center at 4 1/4. You can cut your 8.5 by 11 cardstock in half the other direction. You could score it here on the 5 1/2 mark and then cut at 4 1/4 this direction if you want to, and you'll end up with cards that just open tall ways, the tall way instead of this way. Okay, now I do want to cut one more piece, and because we're going to stamp on a separate piece and add this to our card. I am going to cut this piece in half at 5 1/2. Again, this is the same size as 2 card bases would be. And then I am just going to cut about, let's see, 1 inch, and let's go with 2 inches. 2 inches. I'm going to cut 2 inches off. So this piece measures 2 by 5 1/2. So I have a card base. It's laying here. It's not laying flat, is it? To get your card base to lay flat, a bone folder is what is typically recommended. And this is the way I use it. I used to see people using their bone folder with the part up here. Eventually, after like years of making cards, I realized if you hold it back here and all of this lays over top of the card, that is how you get it to lay flat and get it to do that easily. Okay, now for this one, we are going to stamp some butterflies on here. Did I show you the stamp set we're using? This is the stamp set I'm using, labeled with love. I chose it because it has a few nice greetings. It also has some assorted images that we can use to make all different kinds of cards. So for this one, we are using the butterfly. I am going to use 2 colors of ink. I have a darker one called Berry Burst, lighter one called Pretty in Pink. And here's a little tip. When your ink pads are new, this one's new and it's not opening as easily, you can run a candle, birthday candle, along the edge, or I believe you can use some chapstick as well. But anyway, that'll help lube it up a little bit where the pieces slide. Okay, so I am going to stamp the background of this. Great technique for really simple cards is just to stamp something repeatedly across the background. Now, I don't like to point out my mistakes when I'm making videos, and I encourage you not to focus on mistakes when you make them in your card making, but we're going to use this as a learning experience. So I did not fully ink my stamp. When I inked my stamp here, it wasn't totally level, and this part of the wing didn't get ink on it. So what can we do with this? One, we can just overlook it because it is one little thing in the whole card. We're not done yet. Most likely the person who gets it wouldn't even notice that. But what else can we do? Well, we can just cover it up. And when I stamp this piece, we will do just that. We'll just cover it up. There is always a way to fix mistakes. So what we're going to do now is this, again, is a two-step stamp. It has the fill-in color, which I'm doing right now, and the outline, which I will do next. Sometimes I get the question, which one should you do first? Which part of that two-step stamp? And the answer is, it doesn't matter, whichever one you feel like doing. With certain stamps, one might be easier than the other one. But in most cases, it doesn't matter. Now, with this, I did this on purpose. I didn't even try and line these up. I think I tried to line the first one up. And then after that, I wanted to show you that you don't need to worry about lining your two-step stamps up perfectly. I kind of like them with that offset. Actually, I think I like these better than the one I tried to line up. So there we have our butterflies. We did the two-step stamping. And now we need a greeting to add. And here is a piece of cardstock that I had done something else on. A lot of times I save my scraps. We'll flip it over to this side and stamp the greeting on it. Let's do the birthday greeting, and I think I'll use this darker color. And do you have any punches in your collection? Have you tried to use them yet? We are going to punch this out. But before we do, I just remembered I wanted to stamp this outline stamp. This is one of the things I love about coordinating sets. Coordinating stamp sets that go with punches, or also we'll look at a die set here in a little bit. So sometimes they coordinate with dies. So I can stamp this stamp, and then the punch is going to line up with that perfectly. So let's punch this out. Now there are different punches on the market. I absolutely love these punches from Stampin' Up! For several reasons. One, they're really well made and they last a long, long time. If they ever get to where they're not punching quite right, they're not sharp enough anymore, you can punch through several layers of aluminum foil and that will sharpen them again, and that these things last forever. I really like that they store closed like this. There's a little latch right here that moves back and forth, so I can move it right there. It is latch closed, and I can push it back forward and it pops back open so I can use it. So these are some really nice punches that last a long time. I'm going to line this up. The way I like to do my punching is just like this right here. So I haven't actually punched through yet, but I put my paper in, and I'm right-handed, so with my right hand I am applying enough pressure to hold it in place. So if it's not in the right place, I'll just release a little bit of pressure, move it around till it is in the right place. Once I have it in the right place, I can use both hands and press it, and here we go. I have my adorable punch to put my greeting on my card. So let's go ahead and assemble this card. So let's talk about adhesives a little bit. There are lots of different types of adhesive on the market. Most of them are either some sort of tape runner that is double-sided tape and a dispenser that really makes it easy to apply quickly in the places you want it, or glue. So glue is helpful too. Some people prefer glue over tape. I use glue at times, but most of the time I use my tape runner. Now these are foam dimensionals, and while I'm thinking about it, I'll get my take your pick tool, which is really helpful for a lot of different reasons. So this has several different ends. So we have an end that has an adhesive sticky tip here. We can use it to pick up small pieces. We can use it to apply gems to our project, lots of different things. This end has a piercing tip. It also has a spatula tip. Sometimes I use to lift pieces off if I apply them in the wrong place, or lift pieces off of my cutting plates if I'm die cutting. The piercing tip can be helpful to remove these paper backing pieces, especially if your hands have a hard time with small pieces. And we can apply this wherever we want. We'll put it up here. Okay, so we used our trimmer, we used punches, we used that take your pick tool, and we have a really pretty butterfly card here now. So let's move on to our third card. And for this one, we are going to start using some embellishments. So we have some ribbon, we have some gems. We are going to do a few extra things with this. Now, I've already prepared my card base for this one. I already cut and prepared that since I showed you how to do that. We don't need to do that again. I will show you here the size that I cut a lot of times for my mats for the front of my cards, and also the same size for the insides of my cards is 4 by 5 1/4, and this lines up with my green lines on my trimmer. Pattern papers like this can really make it easy to make some really pretty and fun cards. So we'll bring this in. We're going to put this on the card base, and sometimes it's so hard to choose which side of the paper to use, right? This side is really cute too. I actually have a tutorial on how to use your pattern papers so you see both sides. You could look that one up if you want to. Just click on my name below, my channel name. You can go visit and browse all my tutorials there. Now we're going to do a little bit of stamping, of course. So I'll bring my scrap paper back in. For this one, we are going to stamp the little gifts. And again, it's a 2-step stamp. So we have the base of the gift, and then we'll stamp the little decorations on top. So I'm going to stamp the gift itself in Daffodil Delight a few times. Clean that off, and now we'll add the detail. This is Coastal Cabana. The 2-step stamps really kind of step up cards and make them look more detailed, more involved when you have the 2 colors. Okay, so we have our presents, our gifts stamped, and I believe we have all of our pieces now. Let me pull in the tag that I created, and then I cut a piece of ribbon, and we have some sequins that we will decorate with. So let's attach the gifts. You can put these pieces anywhere you want. I encourage you not to get too worked up about where exactly you're placing your pieces, because they can go anywhere. Now, I thought I'd show you a fun way to use ribbon. You can use ribbon in so many different ways. You can just lay a strip on. Of course, you can tie bows if you... I have some tips on tying bows, but if you don't know how to tie bows yet, you don't have to worry about that. This right here is a fun way that I like to attach ribbons. I just put a strip of tape, and then I wrap this back and forth, up and down a few times to get something that looks a little bit like that. And then I am just going to put my tag on over top of this. So we'll attach some dimensionals to here. Take take those paper backing pieces off here. And then we will apply, we'll put it on the right side up, right? So now let's use the other end of the take your pick tool. And this is how I typically apply my gems and my sequins, rhinestones, whatever they are. I just love, this makes it so easy, that little sticky tip on the end of here. So here you can see this card with the embellishments on it. Okay, we have one more. Let's make the fourth card, and here is where I want to share with you how to do die cutting and embossing. I know I get a lot of questions about how to use die cutting and embossing machines. Different machines have different instructions, but the one that I use makes it really easy because the diagram and basically the instructions are right here on the plates. So I'll show you this real quick. Here we have several options. So this is if we're using thin dies, the metal dies. Here's with standard embossing folders, 3D embossing folders. So standard embossing folders are nice and thin ones. The one we are using here is a thicker one. It's one of the 3Ds. So let me pull in. Here is the die we are going to be using to cut out a piece that looks like this. And then we are going to emboss as well to get this amazing texture. So let's die cut first. So I need to look at my diagram. I've done this plenty of times. So after you've done it a few times, you will get the hang of it. You won't have to think about it too hard. But it's showing me I need plate 1, plate 2, and then both of my clear plates number 3. So here's one of my 3 plates. It has been used and cut into many, many times. It was clear when it was brand new. It is not clear anymore because it's been cut into so many times. I am going to lay my paper on here with my die. And then here is my other 3 plate. And I just push this in gently until it doesn't want to go through anymore. And then I use my handle over here. I'm going to start cranking. And once it catches hold, I secure it with my hand and crank it through. Now, if your machine is new, you may get a lot of popping and cracking. It may make a loud noise as it comes out the other side. Most likely that is normal. As long as you're not forcing anything through and really, really having to push hard, then all of that should be normal. Okay? So here we have that amazing die cut. Dies are one of the most amazing tools when it comes to card making, that you can just make some really, really amazing pieces to add to your card projects. So now what I want to do, let's emboss. So I'm going to go back to the base, and this is one of the thick embossing folders. The standard ones, if you bend them, they would be a little bit more bendable. These are pretty thick. They don't bend very much. This is one of the 3D ones, so I need plate 1 and I need plate 4. So here's my plate 1, and plate 4 is this one right here, the gray plate. Just for fun, we are going to actually emboss the die cut that we just created. So I'll lay it in here. I want to use, because I die cut and it has a front side and a back side, I want to put this in here a certain way. And so here's the front of my folder. I'll open it up, I'll put it in this way and lay that on the platform, put plate 4 over top. And we will do this the same way. I push it in gently, I start cranking. Once it catches hold, I just crank it the rest of the way through. And this is the fun part when we open it up and see what's inside. And look, we gave that amazing texture to this die cut. So that's how to do die cutting and embossing. I know that can be a little bit overwhelming when you first start. With this machine, it's really easy because we have those nice diagrams that show you exactly what to do. But let me bring in my pieces for this card. We are not actually going to use that piece I just created. We're going to use the pieces that I die cut and embossed separately. For this one, we are going to use Petunia Pop ink. Our stamping will be very simple on this one. We are going to use the butterflies again. And this little stamp that says just for you. Thought we'd put the just for you right in the center. And now let's bring in the butterflies. I am just going to use the butterfly outline this time. We'll do one at the bottom. We'll do one at the top. And now we're going to assemble this with a few embellishments. So I get my tape. We will put this piece on. This one, again, I cut this the same size as the one I showed you on the last card, 4 by 5 1/4. It's a really great size to use just as you're getting started. Put some tape on the back of this piece. And I'll just show you real quick several options for how to lay cards out. A lot of times I'll put a strip along either the left side or the right side, and then we could place this here. We could place it over farther. Same thing if it's over here. We could place it down the center. And all of those are good options. You can just see what you like the best. Put some tape across the back of this piece. You will find that all adhesives are not made equally. If you're frustrated with your adhesive, I encourage you to try a different one. Now, here's another idea for what to do with ribbon that doesn't involve tying bows if you don't want to get into tying bows yet. And I just tied a knot and then trimmed the ends at an angle. Put a little glue dot on. Glue dots are a really nice adhesive because they're pre-dried sticky glue dots and it holds right on there. I don't have to put glue on or wait for it to dry or anything like that. Let's add a few of these and then we will look at all 4 of our finished cards. Now sometimes with certain embellishments, I'll show you this, with certain embellishments it may be easier to use the other end of the take your pick tool. And if you're using the other end, it may be easier to pick it up and allow that sheet to bend to pull it off. So let's look at these cards. We have the first one that was very simple to create. Here's the second one with the butterflies. The third one with the gifts, and this last one we created with the die cutting and the embossing. So I hope this helps you know how to use some of those supplies. If you're still adding products to your collection, you're interested in any of the things I showed today, I'll have links in the video description below. Make sure you're subscribed so you see the rest of my videos in this series, and I'll flip my camera around. Let's chat a little bit. So my question for you today is, what does your inner dialogue sound like? Your dialogue up here, what does it sound like? What does it sound like in your mind? You're the only one that knows what goes on up there. But for so many of us, the inner dialogue can be a little bit less positive than we might hope. I actually do pretty well with this at various stages of life. It gets a little uglier up here than I might like to admit. But for the most part, this is something in my life I haven't struggled a ton with. But I just wanted to talk about it because I know it's a struggle for so many people. And I've heard on my whole wellness journey that I talk about pretty often, I've heard several stories lately where people believe very strongly that they developed disease and health problems as a result of a negative inner dialogue. And I've seen some stories here lately of people who healed themselves basically just by changing their mental state. They've healed physical problems. So the special diet I've been on for almost a year and a half now, it is all based on gut health, healing my digestive system. And in healing my digestive system, it should heal health problems, physical health problems, mental health problems, all the things. But in some of the readings I've done, I've seen where whatever's going on in our digestive system is mirroring whatever is going on in our mind. So if we are, and you know this, if you're nervous, if you're anxious, you may not digest food right, you may get butterflies in your stomach. So if we're stressed, if we're anxious, if we're angry, things aren't working right in our digestive systems, and that has a huge effect on our health. So our inner dialogue, what can we do about it? Because negative things go through all of our minds. Maybe they're negative things about ourselves. Maybe we are ashamed of ourselves. Maybe we think that we are not as good at certain things or anything as other people are. Maybe we spend too much time thinking negative thoughts about other people we live with, people in our families, our friends, our coworkers. Maybe these thoughts can be all over the place, right? But let's say certain thoughts are not what we want them to be, and we want to change and have a more positive outlook. What are some of the things that we can do? One of the things that I learned several years ago, I heard this from someone, and it really did help me with one particular negative thought battle I was fighting at the time, was to take that thought and change it and turn it around into something that can be positive. So we'll just use the example of, I don't like a particular person. Like, somebody is really making my life difficult right now. I don't like this particular person. So here's a way to change that. I don't like this particular person because of the hurt they have caused me, but this person, maybe we say this person is an amazing community member and they donate so much time to volunteering in the church or in the community or whatever. So change it around. You could change it to say, but I am learning to see their positive traits and focus on those. But we are working on rebuilding our relationship to where it is going to be a positive thing in my life. So take that negative thought, turn it around, and tell yourself, I believe the basis for this was that really your brain only remembers the end of the thought. It doesn't really remember. We train ourselves, the thoughts that go through our mind, we train ourselves to say these things to ourselves. And if we change what we're teaching ourselves, our brains can actually change as well. So that's one idea. Positive affirmations are a great one. Maybe every morning or several times a day, you repeat positive affirmations to yourself. Like, I am beautiful. I am worthy. I am successful in my job. I am a wonderful wife and mother, whatever it is, and repeat these things to yourself. Other things that can really help with a positive mental state: exercise, get outside, garden. I heard research a long time ago, getting your hands in the dirt actually helps our mental state and our well-being. What else? Oh, I have some more thought. Oh, talk to people, see people, call people, call people. You know that thing? It's called a phone because we can call people. We got to stop texting and actually talk to people. I know for me, most of the time that kind of lifts my spirits and helps me get outside of, you know, this little space where I live with all of these thoughts that clutter my mind. It's good to talk to people. So those are a few ideas for helping with the inner dialogue if you ever struggle with it, if it's not what you want it to be. Encourage you to take some steps to try to change it and make it more of what you would like it to be. Thanks for being here, everyone. I appreciate you. I hope you'll be back again next time when I'll be here helping you to hand make with love.